Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel, everybody. Welcome back, Maverick family and new viewers. What a day. There's not a day that goes by and we don't get some new level of craziness that comes out of the White House. And a lot of it right now, in fact, most of it, I think, kind of directed right at Canada. Really strange. Trump punching America's best friend in the face, which makes no sense at all. And Doug Ford yesterday, Premier of Ontario, telling Trump that, the president can kiss his ass, now getting some pushback in Canada because, we're generally pretty polite people. Instead of telling people to F off, we tend to tell people to take off. But the whole kiss my ass thing, well, I'm going to show you tonight that what goes around comes around because Trump, that's in the thumbnail tonight. He says, they're kissing my ass. That's his thing, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about with regard to that. So all the trade stuff, of course, front and center tonight. So much to talk about there. Plus, I think maybe even more importantly, but certainly related, we have Mike McCarrick here tonight, U.S. veteran, advocate for Ukraine, and he's going to join us on the program to talk about Ukraine and 35 years of independence and what all of that means and where all this is going with the war and how it is all interconnected, even with what's going on in Canada. And I think probably we'll touch a little bit on the situation in Iran tonight too. So Mike will join us when we come back on the other side of this. Let's go surfing.
Maverick News. The new wave in news. Donate at maverickthenations.com.
All right, let's bring Mike in, and there he is. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me again. We already discussed how you're doing. There's a lot to be annoyed with today.
It is, yeah. But the thing is as much as I'm annoyed, I'm more depressed by it. It wears you down day after day after day, especially sitting here dealing with the news every day. And every day it's some new erosion, drip, 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 bit by bit. Today, the crazy thing Trump did today, he says he wants to rename Lake Ontario, Lake America. It'll never be Lake America, as far as I'm concerned, just as it's still the Gulf of Mexico. I told people when he did that, I said, that's just the beginning. This is not a little thing. This is like seizing territory without firing a shot. This is reshaping, like politics. Even countries, nation states, they're just constructs. They are what it's just what people believe in and what we support. And so if he can reframe how people think about things, if he can rename something and get people to accept that becomes the reality. And this is just another step toward, in my view, the ultimate goal, to erase all the borders and have this weird carving up of hemispheres into zones of political dominance, which I've talked about a lot. Venezuela, trying to do his thing in Cuba. He's going after Greenland. It's not a joke. I said a long time ago, he's not joking about Canada 51st state. Like when he's posting online, when Canada becomes the 51st state, We should be taking that very seriously because he keeps repeating it. He knows we don't like it, but he keeps on doing it. This is not trolling. And when he's renaming or saying he's going to now rename Lake Ontario, he's not joking, because to him, it's an important step toward reframing our reality so that we accept that this border is not real. They've had an ongoing information warfare campaign going on up here in Canada to try and convince Canadians that our country is not real, that we don't have a constitution. They've been and it's not true. But a lot of people already believe that because they're watching all of this online, and it's lies. It's just outright freaking lies. I've got a copy of the Constitution that I keep right by my desk. It's around here somewhere. I always keep it close. It's a real goddamn thing. And here's the thing that's really pissing me off most about this, Mike. A lot of people are laughing about this Lake Ontario thing. This is a goddamn insult, not just to Canadians, but even to Americans, and most specifically to the Mohawk Nation on both sides of the goddamn border. Because what he doesn't realize, because he is actually a very stupid man. I'm sorry, I don't have much good to say about Trump tonight, but this is a damn insult to, the indigenous people in that part of North America, because they were here long before all of us. Lake Ontario is an indigenous name. It comes from the Iroquois, from the Mohawk Nation. And you know why he's doing this? This is not an accident. This is not just try to hit back at Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, for saying yesterday, kiss my ass. This is a focused, planned thing. This was coming anyway. They were planned. He and the people around him, who are psychopaths, we're going to rename that lake, or try to do it in just this fashion, because it goes back to the Revolutionary War of 1776, where the Iroquois Nation sided with the British. And after the war, a lot of the people from the Mohawk Nation, the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron, those people from what is now New York State, a lot of them came to Canada, what is now Canada, and resettled in part of Ontario, where they call it Ashwekin now. And the government here provided land for them to come and live. And that still sticks in the craw of these people who just won't let the past go. It's like some unsettled matter, like an old score that still has to be, resolved. That's they hate the king, they hate the monarchy. It's all 1776. Fine. Okay, that's a long time ago. And we're your best goddamn friend, Trump. So stop punching us in the face. And what he doesn't get is that this is another erasure of culture, of history. But he thinks he's like punching Canada in the face with this. He's not. He's punching Americans in the face with this. That Lake Ontario, that's shared history. That's not just Canada. That's the U.S. and Canada. That's New York, the area of the whole New York State, and up into Ontario. We both share that. That name didn't come from Canada. Canada honored those, like that community, that First Nation, the Mohawk Nation. But we took the name for Ontario from the lake, which people had all it was like natural democracy, where people over time adopted that name and agreed upon it. It wasn't like one dude just decided one day to get out his Sharpie and make a declaration or erase a line on a damn map. This is about real people, real history. And this is the thing that honestly binds Canada and the United States together after all of this shared history and bloodshed and lessons learned that we shouldn't be fighting with each other and going to war. And this idiot is rekindling, throwing fuel on old fires and lighting a match. For what? To erase more of the culture and more of the history of the people who are here to begin with. I'm sorry, but it steams me because he's so ignorant and selfish and greedy and corrupt and disrespectful. I just, my God, what the hell is wrong with this guy and the people around him? We are your friends. And, I think we're on the same page, largely, you and I, and we have to find some way to get back to normalcy and putting the past behind us and learning from the past so we don't make the same mistakes moving forward. There's no need for this. He is literally at war with us. And the people on the U.S. side are not seeing this information. They're not really getting the full picture here at all, because they're being fed propaganda and news and partial information and half-truths. And the journalists are not really getting the full picture either, because they're regurgitating the information as journalists tend to do, and they don't fully understand the context. They don't really understand what Canada is about. And on the Canadian side, you've got the media, some media trying to do a proper journalistic job. And then you've got all these paid influencers up here who, frankly, it's becoming so increasingly obvious that they are just paid hacks by American money, whatever, to undermine and disrupt and just rip the country apart by lying and repeating propaganda and just attack, not a goddamn good thing to say. I mean, I can go on and on so long about this. And as I say,
I'm just letting you go.
As I am just more depressed than anything because of this.
Yeah. Well, I would say that exhaustion's part of the point. That's part of their intent. And one of the ways to push back is to not be exhausted, to not give up, not accept, not let them get away with it. And I don't understand. I'm one of those people like, why on earth would you rename these things? Like Gulf of Mexico, whatever. Why does this matter? But Trump has always been about his name. He hasn't built any buildings, but he sure slapped his name on a whole bunch of buildings. And in the US, we have this thing that's been going on for a while now, that Trump has this special fixation on the Kennedy Center, which I don't know if Canadians know what that is, but
everybody up here knows what's going on.
Yeah, it's one of the most famous artistic live performance halls in the United States. It rivals the Metropolitan Opera in New York City, and Symphony Hall in Chicago, and all of these really big places. And Trump's been trying to put his name on it. The court's ruled against him. And just in the last couple of days, the Trump administration in a court filing, because they wanted to put Trump's name back on the building, but underneath saying something about remodeled and renovated by Donald J. Trump. But the law says that you can't do that. But they tried to stack this so that donors would give money on the idea that Trump's name was on the building, whether that's true or not. They're trying to spin this in court, saying we can't even renovate the building. We're just going to have to tear it down if we can't put Trump's name on it. So it's this threat of destroying a cultural center that's near and dear, and it memorializes John F. Kennedy, who, a special person. And Trump wants to jump on the coattails of John F. Kennedy. He wants to put himself in that light. So this is part of Trump's MO for his entire life, really. Flooding the gates, countering disinformation is important. It's been a while since I talked about this, but there's misinformation, which is you're spreading information that is false, but you don't necessarily intend to. You heard it, you thought it was interesting, you're starting to share it, you didn't realize it was wrong. Disinformation is deliberately sharing something you know to be false. And so that is kind of what we're talking about here, is countering disinformation. It used to be called propaganda, but that term got fuzzy. Starting in World War II, it got fuzzy, and so they came up with a new term that was a little more specific. So yeah, pushing back's important. I sent you a couple of days ago the polling on Donald Trump. I don't know if you showed it on your show.
I did,
but
actually. I think I still
Americans
have
do
it.
not support Donald Trump. He is the least supported president, at least in modern history, that we actually have, enough modern polls to actually compare apples to apples. And that pretty much only goes back to, at a stretch, you could probably take it back to Nixon and JFK. But really, it's really just since the 1970s we've had a lot of polls. But he's underwater on all of these things. Trade and the economy, they're way down. His overall approval is negative by 20 points. There's another graph so anytime you have a poll, you have shaded margins of errors. He is well outside the margin of error. There is no error to this poll that would make Trump popular. So when Canadians are getting all mad and all this, remember that Americans don't support this guy either. That this is the general one where you can see that white distance in between the faded areas. There is, I mean, it's been a while since even the faded area dipped the tiniest bit below 50% on his disapproval rating. That's that top line is his disapproval rating, the red number. And this is what Americans think of Donald Trump. Yeah, this is what Americans think of Donald Trump. And this includes everything. This includes polls that historically favor Donald Trump. Rasmussen and RMG are two of the ones that usually overrate Trump by 5 to 10%. And this includes those polls. This is an average of the polls. So the Americans do not support what Donald Trump is doing right now. Just as a reminder to Canadians that Americans agree with you when you like, what the heck is Trump doing? Why does this make sense? This is dumb. It's dangerous. It's damaging because it damages Americans too. Because Canada is the single largest trade partner of the United States. I can't remember the exact number, but it's just a shade below $500 billion in trade. So close to $500 billion in trade that we do between America and Canada. It's a huge amount. That's by far higher than any other nation on the planet, including, China, which has a significantly bigger economy than Canada. So that says something about just how interlinked we are, how friendly we've been, and the silliness, stupidity, self-destructive approach that Trump's taking here. So my understanding, at least how it's being reported in the US, is that what blew these talks up, I believe it was Scott Bessent, if I remember correctly, swooped in at the last moment because there was something he didn't like. And they started throwing things in about Canada needs to stop treating the French language as an official national language. I'm like,
yep.
Because that echoes the stuff in the US where there's been the English only push for a while.
Yes.
Which is also weird because there's places like Texas and California as two examples that they have families that have been there longer than they've been part of the United States that are native Spanish speakers. And so the Spanish language is very deep inside of significant portions of American culture and territory. And so that's, again, it's an attack on basic cultures. And one of the things that I was thinking, not to flip it, but your display of anger and frustration is very echoey of what I hear out of Ukrainians talking about Russia. And so when we are comparing what Trump is doing to what Putin is doing to Ukraine, or at least the propaganda that Russia puts out about Ukraine, that's a strange place to be.
Are you sure that the president's actually on your side down there?
No, and that's what the polling is saying, is that people are seeing what he's doing going, what? No. what is going on here? So yeah, it's no, we're not. We'll see how the elections turn out in November. That'll be an interesting thing.
Yeah, just to come back, just to take a step back so I can run this clip. You know, Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, under a little bit of fire pressure here because people, of course, when you have a premier, get down in the gutter and play in the muck, right? And say the president can kiss my ass and called him the bankruptcy king and just a
Which
whole
he
bunch
is.
of. Right? And I was thinking about that. Well, people are saying, "Oh, Doug Ford," and over on CNN today, I think Wolf Blitzer said, "Do you think maybe you should tone it down a bit?" And Ford said, "Yeah, I guess got a little personal yesterday." No, not really.
No, you got to own that.
Yeah, because you know why? It is accurate. All the things that he said, every insult is actually true. And what goes around comes around because while everyone is saying, oh, you shouldn't be saying things like he can kiss my ass. Well, Trump does it all the goddamn time. So here he is back in April talking about all the countries that he's tariffing.
This time I'm doing what I want to do with respect to the tariffs. I think we're going to do much better. Don't let some of these politicians go around saying, because I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir. And then I'll see some rebel Republican, some guy that wants to grandstand, say, I think that Congress should take over negotiations. Let me tell you, you don't negotiate like I negotiate.
That's for sure. Nobody negotiates like you do because every other word is like a goddamn insult.
We have.
And
he showed less dementia in that April quote than he's showing currently.
And then you go back, I don't remember, this is back May 1st of last year. And here he is insulting people who spent like hundreds of millions of dollars to get him elected, saying that even they can kiss his ass.
If you look at some of these internet people, I know so many of them. Elon is so terrific, but I know now all of them, they all hated me in my first term, and now they're kissing my ass, do you know? It's true.
Oh yeah, that's really funny. How much did Elon Musk spend to be insulted
Some
like that?
insane amount. I don't
250
even
million.
Any. Yeah, it was insane, whatever it was. And I was gonna put out a guess of 100 million, but it's at least in that same insane.
I'm pretty sure it's 250.
Ballpark. Yeah.
Thanks for the 250, Elon.
And it shows how a relationship with Trump actually is. That it's one directional. That's how he thinks of all of his relationships. It's transactional. It's not, there's no loyalty there. Loyalty only goes one way, and that's towards Donald Trump. And the people that he's kicked to the curb. He buried his first wife in a golf course so he could get a tax exemption on the golf course and call it a graveyard. And then he hasn't taken care of the gravesite. He just let it overgrow with weeds. And that's how he thinks of his first wife, the mother of 3 of his children. So, Donald Trump is probably everything that you think he is. And
people need to wake up because he doesn't like you folks. He does that people if you support him, he doesn't even like you. And
that's what I'm saying is that it goes only one way.
Yes. And it's becoming more and more obvious over time. And people have been coming on here. They're in the chat and they're saying, Rick, you have TDS. No, man, what's going on is there's some weird psychological thing going on where you've got like a cult or something where you've got mass formation masochism taking hold. It's like people like the abuse.
TDS is what the Trump supporters, it's like they don't believe their lying eyes. They don't believe facts. They don't know numbers. They don't. Yeah, there's all sorts of things they completely ignore to support this man.
Yeah.
And
Have you-
it's just a little bit of projection, calling
Yeah.
other people deranged
Yeah.
because if they dare criticize Dear Orange Leader.
Exactly. It triggers people. In fact, I'm going to run this thing and then we're going to run
It's
this
funny.
thing.
So Dear Leader is what they call the leaders of North Korea, which is just ironic because he seems to like the North Korean leader so much. But Dear Orange Leader is one of the things that Americans call Trump.
Yeah. And this is what happens when you criticize Mr. Trump here. This is what gets left on my voicemail.
Next message. Shame on you, Rick Walker. Shame on you, you of all people. Shame on you, Rick Walker. Shame on you. Shame on you, Rick Walker. Shame on you. 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 Shame on you.
The number you have reached is not in service.
And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made.
I'm absolutely disgusted what you did on Saturday night. You're a liberal piece of shit. Shame on you. Shame on you. You're a disgusting individual.
Hello?
Just remember, Rick, you're the one that did to the ostrich farm. You never got off your ass when I was there.
And as you talk to us for one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one.
The taboo man that you are.
362015.
You're a liberal piece of shit.
This is a recording.
I don't know. Your show is absolutely disgusting. You should get some help because you have really severe TDS as well. I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know what's wrong with you. You have really severe TDS.
For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives.
Your show is strictly war and Trump.
Captain, are you through? Waiting.
TDS. Your show is absolutely disgusting. Just disgusting.
Okay, thank you.
You should be shut down. Just disgusting.
The number you have reached is not in service. This is a recording.
Yeah. Your show is absolutely disgusting. Just disgusting.
Yeah, your show is disgusting, Rick, just so you know.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It wouldn't be about war and Trump if Trump had kept his promises and had not taken America into wars.
Is that still playing? Sorry. I was just kind of curious and something else was still running.
There's something wrong, man. There's something wrong out there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've run into some interesting stuff as well, like being challenged on like what is explicitly a war crime and saying that's legitimate. The targeting is legitimate. And it's just that kind of stuff boggles my mind. But yeah, I mean, I try and focus on Ukraine and leave the Trump stuff a little bit in the background. Yeah. You know, it's just one of those I don't want to.
Yeah, I know.
Focus.
I wasn't even sure if I should talk about this tonight.
No, this is
coming
fine.
on.
My focus, that's for what I put out on like my social media kind of stuff. But there's like, I want to say all this stuff about Trump, and I'm like, okay, let's keep our focus. But yeah, you're right that you and I agree a lot on this, so you're not going to hear me dispute. And like I already said, I think most of Americans agree with you too.
Yeah, I look at the way he's treating, the U.S.
So
military. What happened with the Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my
and
God.
it's not just that. There's other examples as well. But God, that's another thing. Like, what's with the renaming, where the Department of Defense has to be the Department of War, and then of course they start a war and manage to lose it. So there's that. Unknown caller. But it's just, pushing back. You got to push back. One of the things to remember if you're up in Canada is that what Trump is doing will hurt Americans. And you mentioned this. It's going to hurt people in all of those border states. So Maine and New York and Michigan and Minnesota and all of those border states, Washington over by Vancouver, all of those border states are going to be hurt. The businesses, even before this silliness, tourism from Canada was down like something like more than 25%. I thought it was higher than that, but that's a big hit. And for places like, Las Vegas or either the Disneys or just any of those, like New York City, any of those places that tourists tend to go, that's a big hit because they have a big tourists tend to go there. So people make money off of tourists. And if they don't go there, then you all of a sudden aren't making any money. It's hitting a lot of the Kentucky bourbon, all of those red state alcohol things, breweries and distilleries. It's hitting them hard. Yeah, so there's a lot of this that'll hurt Americans. And I don't think Trump actually understands how trade with Canada works, because in many ways, our economies are joined at the hip, where there's American factories that produce things and they might assemble things, but they only can do that because they're getting the parts from Canadian factories.
Yep.
And it going all the way back to the F-35. The tail assemblies, among other things, of the F-35s are built in Canada. That's not the only place they're built, but that's like more than half of them are built in Canada. So good luck making an F-35 if you don't have the back half of the airplane. That's going to be that's not going to fly very well. It's just, I don't get it. I don't think he gets it. I don't think he understands it.
He doesn't. He's ignorant.
So I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I've been watching, and doctors trying to diagnose a patient that they don't actually see. They're trying to diagnose it through pictures and video. So any, honest doctor is going to say, look, I'm not examining this patient, but they're seeing things. The visible signs of dementia and congestive heart failure and 3 or 4 other conditions. He's fading. Is not what he was even a year ago. He's 80 years old. His father had horrible dementia. It looks like he does too. I don't have anything good to say. I'm a little bit scattered on this topic, but yeah, I have nothing good to say about the man.
Well, I can segue into something that maybe you can help me comment on a little bit, but to get there, I do want to highlight a couple of things. He says that the United States doesn't need Canada. He said today that the U.S. doesn't plan on doing doesn't plan on doing much business with Ontario at all anymore. But, I remember and covered personally a couple of big border blockades with truckers going back decades. And as soon as the border crossings were shut down, I'll tell you this, businesses over on the U.S. side freaked out.
Yeah.
Auto companies, It was costing them, tens of millions of dollars every day, if not more. They put huge pressure on both governments to get the blockade lifted. This was over deregulation of the trucking industry and also free trade, which was part of all of that at the time, which was hurting independent truckers. So they shut the border down, and it was a huge deal. And that's about largely about that Ambassador Bridge in Windsor. And I'll tell you this, if I had been faced with the controversy surrounding the Ambassador Bridge and then that new Gordie Howe Bridge in Windsor, Detroit, which the Canadian government entirely paid for, so I would have handled it a whole lot differently. Because on the Canadian side, I think we've been pretty tolerant and pretty nice to the Maroon family, which privately owns the Ambassador Bridge. And this is the bridge, the Ambassador Bridge. This is an old, rickety, century-old piece of concrete and steel that spans the Detroit River. Been there a whole long time. It is rickety, and it has at times, I would say that it might even, dare I say, it's at times been unsafe.
Well, it probably certainly doesn't have the weight tolerances that modern vehicles are looking for.
So,
like a big old semi truck, this wasn't built for that.
So there have been instances where giant pieces of concrete have fallen from the bridge, and they've had to shut down roads on the Windsor side.
You can see a big old giant semi on top there.
That's right. And tons of these trucks go back and forth over it, like one of the busiest border crossings in North America, right?
Well,
this
I
goes
mentioned
back some years.
Canada is the United States' largest trading partner.
So on this day, now this is some years ago, but there you go. Okay, so that's why we built the damn bridge. One of the main reasons.
You need another one. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's old. Tear the damn thing down. But it's privately owned. They're milking it for every penny they can get out of it. It's all about the profit. And they've, the whole Gordie Howe Bridge, the new bridge that we paid for.
This doesn't look nearly as pretty as New York deals with some of their historic bridges, like the Brooklyn Bridge or the Golden Gate out in San Francisco. This does not look like it's one of those architectural city landscape. You want to save it just because it's part of the city. That just looks like it's a standard iron.
200-pound chunks of concrete falling down on residential streets, right? So you know what I say? I say, if I was the prime minister, I'd be, you know what? Maybe that bridge isn't safe. Maybe we should be shutting it down.
Yeah, declare it unsafe.
Yeah. So we have a lot of tools in the toolbox, is what I'm getting.
Well,
at, right?
There's a big discussion in the Trump opposition to Trump in the U.S. And some of this is by former Republicans like Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, Joe Walsh, if I'm remembering that name correctly. There's a whole packet of them. But these are people that used to be in the House of Representatives. They were elected GOP Republican members of Congress, and now they're vigorously anti-Trump. And that goes along with the people on the left. But these are people on the right. They're going, this is not my party anymore. I don't know what happens. This isn't even America anymore at this point. And so the discussion is we've been lenient. We've been assuming that the structures and the guardrails on American society, on American politics, on American law will hold up, and we can no longer assume that. And so it might be time to push back a little bit harder. Not a little, and by little bit, I mean push back hard. So Doug Ford's, he can kiss my ass. Why should he apologize for that? Right. I don't think he should. Because the thing that got me, the Native American stuff that you mentioned, I hadn't really thought of, but the whole thing about the French language, which is so central to certainly significant parts of Canada, but probably Canada as a whole.
Oh yes.
Just like, some of the Irish heritage in Boston, Massachusetts, for instance, or Native Americans out west, Spanish in the places I mentioned, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. I claim Colorado is my home state. I wasn't born there, but that's what I claim. That's a Spanish name. It's an American state with a Spanish name. So it's just, yeah, push back harder. Don't apologize for pushing back, because kind of like what I said about Putin, he's not somebody you negotiate, somebody that you stop. And I think that's kind of where we've gotten.
See, Trump today posted that he loves the French Canadians, and they're free to. In fact, that's when he said in his post today, when Canada becomes the 51st state, they can still speak French if they want to, but English, of course, will be their first language.
That's been a thing. God, I was a kid the first time that I heard that, the English only stuff in the United States. And it didn't make sense to me back then. Because we had migrant workers, there was Spanish spoken all over where I lived. So good luck with that.
See, in Canada, French, English, those are the two official languages. Yes. And I didn't know this until I didn't know for about a month or two after, but Trump signed an executive order declaring English the official language now of the United States, which many people don't know, but it's not codified.
That's not legally binding. Yeah.
Right.
So he can he can say that he loves French Canadians, because saying that's free. He isn't obligated to actually do anything or actually show them that he loves them. He can say that, and that's one of the ways that he masks his other thing, is his supporters can go, but he said he loves the French people. I'm like, there's what he says, and then there's what he does.
Right.
And it goes back to the old saying, if somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And that has nothing to do with what they say.
Right. And how do you erase the culture? Well, you rename a lake, and then you, or say you're going to, and then you tell Canada that you're not allowed to trade with other countries, which erases the sovereignty. We, as a sovereign nation state, we have the right to do trade with anybody we want. Europe, China, for that matter.
It's kind of silly, because one of the reasons why Canada is such a valuable trading partner is that you do trade with the rest of the world,
right?
And that benefits us. And
there's
places that you guys trade with that we don't, and that's great, because that still benefits us.
And then he wants, the real reason, a couple of reasons, get rid of French as a trade barrier, because you see in Canada we have bilingual packaging on everything, right? Well, if you get rid of that, then it makes it easier for U.S. imports to come in.
But that's like just this marginal cost. It's just it's one of the silliest objections I've ever heard.
And then on the broadcasting side, they're saying, well, you have, the Canadian government dictates how many channels on cable and satellite systems have to be Canadian channels, or other country channels from even other countries, right? US, European, whatever. So the government regulates that stuff, and they want all of that gone. Well, I don't know, man. We're a sovereign country. The airwaves are sovereign here, right? Like, we get to decide what
I'm going to say it again. As angry as you are now, you really understand at a visceral level how Ukrainians feel about Russia.
Right. And we're going to get into that.
Not just Ukrainians.
Can I ask you first a question about what's going on in Iran?
You can ask a question. Whether I have an answer or not, it's different.
Okay. So yesterday, Besant comes out and lays out the details, sort of, on the economic D-Day strategy, because obviously bombing them isn't working, right? So now they're going back to economic warfare.
Where the fits and starts bombing there's so much stupid going on right now.
So as I listen to this, I mean, this is actually a very serious thing.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond the sanctions that are already in place, which are extensive.
The sanctions against Iran have been extensive since 1979.
Yeah. So what do you make of what they're doing with this? What's your take on it?
It's not going to work. I don't, especially because, places like Canada and the UK and Germany aren't going to do a whole lot of trade with Iran, but you've got Russia and you've got China and you've got India probably some of the Gulf nations, Pakistan. You've got some pretty big economies that are doing business with Iran. So the U.S. announcing sanctions, I don't think it's going to do anything.
Well, it goes beyond sanctions though, because he's saying any country that trades with Iran
Yeah.
in any way,
That's
they'll
part of
be
sanctions.
kicked
Yeah.
out of the U.S. financial system. They
Mhm.
won't have access to, international settlements. They won't be able to trade in U.S. dollars. This again seems to me to be very self-destructive. It's almost like he's trying to destroy the American economy by, eroding trust in the system.
Well, that's been true. I don't know if he's intentionally doing that, but that's been the effect for a while now. The erosion of American soft power, certainly, because one of the things that Trump does not understand, because he understands the naming and he understands, I really like it when they kiss my ass and all that kind of stuff that you put up there. He doesn't understand that America was powerful and America was the dominant nation on the planet because people wanted to be friends with America. They wanted to be cooperative with America, both economically and it's not even a both. It's like on all levels. It's economically, it's tourism, it's militarily, it's culturally. America was one of the nations that people wanted to be friends with. And that was the source of our power. And one of the things that we're dealing with here in the United States is there was a presumption of regularity. It's a very legalistic term. But what it was is in the courts, in American court system, the judicial branch is a separate branch, distinct from Congress and the presidency, where in the courts, there was a presumption that the lawyers from the executive branch, so the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's lawyers, the U.S. attorneys, there was a presumption that what they brought to the court was honest, legal, and correct. And that's not true anymore. And so there's a complete breakdown on just that basic level of trust. And that's kind of emblematic for how Trump's been affecting America's standing in the world. Because today, courts, when a government lawyer from the Department of Justice walks into the court, they're not going to assume that this person's going to be honest, truthful, or even presenting legally sound arguments. They're just not going to assume that anymore. And that's kind of how nations are going to start treating the United States. So the erosion of power is, I mean, we still have all the weapons, we still have all the money for now anyway. But when people don't want to be partners and friends and allies, then you just lost so much. And I mean, we still have the powerhouse economy and a lot of wealth. And so that will be what they call a lagging indicator. That would be the last one to go. But you're already seeing it in tourism and in trade and in military cooperation. And yeah, it's ugly and it's getting uglier. That's why I'm really hoping that the November elections here give us a Congress that's in opposition to Trump, that actually has some legal teeth, because right now it's just the only opposition is coming from some of the judges.
Look, I mean, you got to get rid of this guy because he's destroying your
Mm-hmm.
economy. He, I'll tell you this, what he doesn't realize, and these arrogant people around him, we're going to eat your lunch because we're already making deals around the world with countries that do
well, that's
trust
what I'm
us.
saying. Yeah.
They don't trust America anymore because of this guy. And this is eroding the economy. Now you just hit $40 trillion in debt.
Mm-hmm.
40 trillion. You can't sustain that, especially not with the interest rates where they're at. And if you my God. And then he's shrinking the economy with the tariff war, not just on Canada, but all of
it's the tax
America's
cuts
friends.
too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is not going to work.
There was a graph somewhere out there that there's been 3 big tax cuts this century. The Bush and then both Trump tax cuts. And that we wouldn't be in this debt situation if those tax cuts hadn't happened.
And he needs to expand the economy, not contract it. And these tariffs contract everything. It pulls everything in. The difference between what Canada is doing right now and Trump is we build bridges, he builds walls.
Well, there's the soft side of this too, because Trump is he's erratic, and this goes to the military stuff. It also goes to everything. Where if you're looking at America, there's a lot of wealth here, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of people here that want to buy things. But if you are unsure day to day or even hour to hour, sometimes if the terms that you are working under are the same, if they're just not going to change just at a whim, why would you enter into that sort of economic trade agreement? Why would you trust? Kind of what I was talking about with the courts. There's not a presumption of trust anymore, where that's used to be our strong suit. We used to have the Americans. Yeah, we're Winston Churchill. The Americans will try all the wrong things before they'll eventually get to the right way, but they have to try all the wrong ways first. But at some level, you could trust America, and under Trump, it's becoming a real problem.
It is. And it's surprising how closed the American economy is when it comes to world trade. I mean, there's a lot of activity that goes on within the United States itself, but for an economy the size of the US, it is surprisingly closed looped. And that also, I think, leaves it very vulnerable. So much so that, what people don't realize is Canada buys like a third of all of the motor vehicles that the US exports. More than
that doesn't surprise me.
Number one by far. So
you guys are the easiest to get to. It's a lot harder to ship to Europe.
Yep.
It's a lot harder to ship to Japan or China. And Japan actually built factories in the US, so Japanese cars are built here. It just, yeah.
So
Depressing.
Nobody buys like outside of the United States and Canada, a little bit in Mexico. People don't buy North American like GM Ford product in other countries. Ford will manufacture, and GM even manufactures in China. But you go to Europe,
Ford has a pretty strong business in Europe, but that's
but they sell different models.
They do. They sell Euro spec vehicles that they don't sell in the US.
Right. So you're not exporting the vehicles that you produce there,
Nope.
but in his little mind, it's still 1957, right? And that's what he's just the big three, and got to get that back.
Yeah.
And it's not like that, and it's totally integrated.
One of the big three is owned by a French company, so
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's
the
Stellantis,
Chrysler Group's
right?
owned by Fiat.
Yeah, well, that's Stellantis,
Fiat's
and they
owned
own
by Stellantis. Yeah,
Stellantis is the parent company for all of it. There are tons of brands: Citroen, Vauxhall. The list goes on and on. Volvo. I think Volvo is part of that.
I don't remember. Volvo used to be owned by Ford, but I think that changed.
Yeah, because they all own bits and pieces of each other anyway, and when it comes down to it. But yeah, Stellantis is the big parent company, and Chrysler is a shadow of what it used to be. They only produce they still do the 300 and the Challenger and the Charger and they don't.
Those are Dodge. Those aren't Chrysler.
They're Chrysler products.
Yeah, but they're not.
And
they're
Ram
not
truck, they
Chrysler
call it now
label.
instead of, but all under the Stellantis umbrella. And, so the Windsor plant, they produce the Pacifica, which was, the minivan plant, but that's the only model of the minivan they produce now. They haven't been investing in Chrysler. There was talk of selling that, spinning that off and selling it, but they haven't been developing stuff. So it's not like it used to be, right? And man, it's frustrating. I heard like Lutnick came on and said this week, 2 days ago, that the reason auto assembly plants in Michigan had closed and moved to Canada is because we have no unions. So the guy is a freaking idiot. And or a liar.
Union game stronger than the U.S.?
Yes, he's so stupid. Canada used to be part of the United Auto Workers Union, and then under Bob White and the CAW, years ago, Canada, the Canadian arm of the union, split off over a lot of these same kinds of issues, right? So about 30% of the Canadian workforce is unionized, only about 10% on the US side. And Lutnick is so ignorant, first of all, Canada does have unions. Secondly, and of course, so wage structures are very similar back and forth across the border, and benefit packages and so on. The other thing is, there has never been at any time in history a factory, an auto assembly plant in Michigan that has closed and moved to Canada. Ever. Never, ever, ever, ever has ever happened. We've competed for new plants, but over time, we've just all been building new plants and building a bigger and bigger industry together.
It's interlinked.
Since the dawn of the auto industry in the beginning of the 1900s, right? We've built it together. It's not like we were raiding you. Wage structures similar, union agreements similar. They treat it like one big industry across the border. He's an idiot.
It's been basically since the 1920s that it's been that strong.
And when the United States auto industry, when you guys were losing jobs to Mexico, and when the imports started coming in from originally like Europe with Volkswagen, and then Japan in the 70s, the huge competition that came from that, Canada was losing jobs just like you guys. We were in lockstep together. We were both suffering and trying to find ways. And when those auto companies were going under, when Chrysler needed a bailout, you helped and we helped. When General Motors went bankrupt, you guys put money into the company, and so did Canada, because we were in lockstep. And when under Biden, you there was wanted to put tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Canada was like, yes, we will do it too. We are in lockstep with you. We are in partnership with you. We will do exactly the same thing as you. And you know who got hammered over that? We got hammered because, and this is the thing that they're not telling you guys on that side of the border. Canada was targeted by China because we put the tariffs on Chinese vehicles, but they didn't put it on the US. They put the pressure on us, and they counter-tariffed canola farmers in Western Canada, and it was putting them out of business. We wouldn't even be importing any of those electric Chinese vehicles, the 49,000, if Trump hadn't done all of this crap, right? And now he's blaming us.
Well, that goes back to the presumption of trust. When before this, if the president said we need to do something, then people listen and say, okay, then we presume that you are trustworthy and this is a good thing to do. And that used to be one of the biggest strengths the United States enjoyed, and that's just gone now.
And when we were approached and asked, would you guys tariff the Chinese vehicles with us? The answer was, of course we will.
Yes, because the trust was there.
Yes. Now that's all blown out. While he sits there and complains because of the very thing that he caused. Are you sure? I'm pretty sure he's not on your side.
He's on his side.
Yeah. Yeah. Very clear. But apparently I have TDS. So, can we take a short break and then come back? Then then we can talk about Ukraine, because I know that's what the focus of this whole thing was supposed to be about tonight.
Except that this is all related.
It is.
And we're entering scary times. So with that, sorry.
Okay, we'll take a real short one and come back, and then we'll dig into the next chapter in tonight's broadcast.
Okay.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, and we're back.
Almost went and grabbed a serious drink, but I got a sports drink instead.
Well, the program might get interesting then.
You're driving me to drink, Rick.
Yeah, I personally don't really partake, but I do have my ginger ale.
Well, this is body armor. It's Gatorade, but better for you with less sugar and more vitamins.
So, it was a significant day yesterday in Ukraine.
And there's something that happened recently that I'm trying to figure out what to make of it. Did you see that the director of the CIA flew to Moscow?
No.
The last time this happened was in, I'd like to say December of 21, but it might have been late November. It was the last few weeks of 2021. And the director of the CIA flew to Moscow to speak to Putin and say, look, we know you're going to invade Ukraine. That's what you're preparing for. We can see you doing it. Don't do it. We're warning you. That was the last time this happened. And recently they just found the third Russian combat drone at an airport in Germany. There's a problem in Sweden with a bunker being built right off of one of their big naval bases, a Russian bunker on one of those Russian oligarchs' lands. There's been attacks and assassinations and arson and sabotage all through Europe. Putin has been nationalizing private industries. He's been confiscating private wealth. There was a run on the banks about a week ago, and evidently they knew something because Russia started confiscating the bank's assets to continue to pay for the war. They're trying to do a backdoor conscription. They're trying to get 300 to 500,000 new troops into the military right away, which I'm not sure how they're going to do that because they can't train or equip them quite yet. But there's all sorts of ugly things that it looks like Putin is going to try and double down and possibly attack Europe. But we also don't know because this is Trump, and you don't necessarily trust that what he's doing is honest. But it wasn't. This was the director of the CIA who has been a Ukraine hawk. He's been a supporter of Ukraine. This was not the Keystone Cops negotiators that are very pro-Russia. This wasn't even Marco Rubio. This was the director of the CIA, and this is a very uncommon visit. Obviously, we don't know what they actually said, so it's going to be a question going forward what's going on here. But he's one of the ones that made sure that we continued sharing intelligence with Ukraine. He's been a supporter of armaments. He's been one of the reasons why Trump, instead of just completely cutting off Ukraine, decided he'd sell weapons to Ukraine. God, that's another lie. He keeps putting out absurd amounts like 300 billion or something about what we've given to Ukraine, and it's more like 60 billion. He has no idea what's going on. So that's been one of the visit to Moscow by the director of the CIA. The funny thing is when they decided they had to go to Moscow, they had to ask Ukraine's permission, because they had to say, hey, are you willing to give Moscow 2 days of rest from your aerial attacks while the director of the American CIA is in Moscow? And Ukraine has plenty of targets, so they're like, okay, we'll go attack some other things. That's okay. But yeah, it was just a very interesting development that just started. The details of it started coming out in just the last couple of days, the last couple of hours mainly, with the videos that started coming out, and it was more or less after he left that the details started coming. So yeah, I don't know what to make of that yet. We might find out soon. We might not find out for a couple of decades when that stuff gets released in somebody's book of this time period, you know. So that's still figuring out what to make of that. The Ukraine just celebrated their 35th Independence Day. But I'd like to, that was the 24th. That was today's Tuesday, so that was yesterday.
Yesterday. Yeah.
But that was 35 in a row. They gained their independence in 1991, but people don't sometimes realize they were independent 1917 when the Tsar fell. Ukraine was an independent nation while they think about the Russian Revolution like, you know, Stalin and Lenin and all that kind of stuff, but Russia had a civil war. The Reds under Lenin and Stalin were one faction, but there were the Whites as well. And they had a civil war that didn't end until 1921, 1922. Ukraine was a sovereign nation, 1917 to 1922. And, you know, before that, we've said this before, Ukraine is older than the idea of Russia. It goes back 1,200 years. But yeah, it's a big thing. They take their Independence Days very seriously there, because they've had to fight for every single day of their freedom. And it's an important thing. I had my Vyshyvanka on. That's a traditional Ukrainian shirt that has the traditional native embroidery. You mentioned Native Americans, but we don't necessarily realize that we had those native cultures everywhere in the world. And so the embroidery pattern in Ukraine is more than 1,000 years old. And you just go a little bit further west into Romania, it's a different pattern. And it's kind of when you think about that kind of a thing, and that it's an interesting how deep the cultural things go, because we in North America don't necessarily think about it. Certainly not in the United States. We don't think about it because we're Americans, and our history basically started whenever our ancestors got here. And yeah, so we don't necessarily think about how, you know, centuries deep heritage like a lot of other humans do. And so they take their Independence Day very seriously. And I like to help them do that. I've got one of the units over my shoulder, the flag that they gave me, that I have on display in, I don't know if you wanted to call it my man cave, but that's a unit out of Poltava. That was one of the very first units that I helped, Ukrainian military units, and they signed it and they gave it to me. So that was kind of them. And I display it in their memory.
And before we went live, you showed me something from a friend of yours who passed away.
Yeah. So there was a very famous, well, if you're in military circles, he was famous. He was a Ukrainian MiG-29 pilot. And back in 2018 is when I met him. There was a joint exercise between American Air Force and Ukrainian Air Force. And he was a famous MiG-29 pilot. He was one of the guys that was pushing to get better jets for the United States. And back then they were like, man, we'd really love some of these F-15s that you guys have over here. He was big push for F-16s after the war started. He died 3 years ago today. This is his unit patch. I sent that unit 20 flight suits, some boots, some coveralls for the ground crew. I helped him out in the small ways that I could. Flight suits are not something that people necessarily think of, but they're expensive. Fire retardant materials, it's like a $250 suit. It's not cheap, especially on a military salary, and especially on a military salary in a poor nation. So yeah, I helped him out as much as I could. But yeah, 3 years ago today he died.
So you mentioned Putin possibly gearing up to attack Europe. We've seen drones in Romanian airspace, and I think there
Polish
was even a
airspace and the Baltics, and
yes.
Bob's very excited.
Yeah, he's must be somebody up there protecting the place. So where are we at today? It looks like Ukraine is to some degree on the offense on the front foot, and Russia seems to be on the back foot.
So Ukraine's had, and I mentioned this before, they've had an ongoing, more than a year at this point, campaign against Russian supplies. This has been, it started out on the oil facility, because if you can't get the fuel, it's kind of hard to make anything else work. So that was their first target, and they've been very successful. They keep going after oil production facilities. But that's not by no means their only target right now. The last 6 to 12 months, they've been hitting Russian and anti-aircraft missile sites, radars, guns, any anti-aircraft site. They've been hitting those when they could target them since the start. But there's been a very coordinated campaign, at least the last 6 months, but probably longer, of just going after everything they can find. For various reasons, Ukraine has been able to gain a battlefield and a mid-range strike, so out to about 200 miles behind the front lines is what I would call a mid-range strike. They've been able to gain a certain level of drone advantage. That doesn't mean that Russia doesn't still attack Ukraine with drones. They do. But the advantage has been on the Ukrainian side lately. Hopefully, if they can keep it, because Russia isn't sitting still. So they've been going after the anti-aircraft sites hard, and these are expensive systems. The radars with the sanctioned electronics are hard to replace. Even if without sanctions, they're expensive. It takes time to build them. They're not simple pieces of machinery. So destroying one's kind of a big deal. Even just one, and they've destroyed a couple of hundred, several hundred at this point. And they've been going after supply trucks. They've been going after the wild berries supply hubs, their warehouses. Just been going after everything, and we're starting to see battlefield results from that. We started to see it a couple of months ago, but recently the Russians have been trying to go after Ukraine's fortress belt. If people remember where that is, those are the cities in eastern Ukraine. Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and Konstantinivka are the three big ones. Historically, they were industrial towns, but they are the defensive line for Ukraine right now. And Russia has been going after Sloviansk and Konstantinivka pretty hard. And recently, Ukraine is about to cut off between 5,000 and 10,000 Russian troops in the Le Mans direction. The Ukrainian maps don't show this right now. It's funny because I found this out by looking at the Russian maps. And usually the Russians are the ones to not report things until well after the fact. But in this case, Ukraine was able to keep a lid on what the military refers to as OPSEC, is operational security. What that is this is the wrong one, sorry. This is a different one. I sent you an email saying, oops, sorry, the last one was wrong. Yeah.
Okay.
And it should have 2 maps on it. I just sent you the wrong 2 maps on the first email.
So both of those were wrong.
One of them was wrong. The one that you put up was wrong.
Okay, I'll get
Sorry
you
about that.
No,
That was
that's
my
fine.
mistake. And you can't call back emails. I wish you could.
Here we go. So it'll be this one.
Kind of. So this shows you at the very top, you can see that little red thing poking east. That is the place that we're talking about. And then if you can find you can see Le Mans right there and then go north of it.
I can't drag it, but I can zoom
Scroll.
in or out.
Can you scroll up on the right side on that bar?
There we go.
There you go. Yeah, so you can see that red thing that's sticking out that is surrounded, is not quite wrong way.
There we go. That's
A little bit further up. There you go.
Okay.
So yeah, and you can see how that's surrounded in 3 directions by blue, which is Ukrainian territory. Ukraine has been doing a pincer movement trying to pinch that off. But it wasn't acknowledged. Operational security is when you control the information that goes out. You basically just don't say anything about what you're doing. And the Ukrainians have been very tight-lipped. If you can go on to a different map.
Yeah.
Is there another map?
I've got a bunch, actually. I've got the oil refinery strikes.
Not that one. There should have been an email that had 2 maps on it saying this is let me pull up my email and I can tell you what the subject line was.
Lyman direction.
This is the correct one or something like that.
I've got another one here.
Sorry, this is correct. Lyman cut off. Oh, there's two on. Yes. So this is a Russian map. And if you can zoom in that, this is a lot more detailed, but zoom in on the very center of the map. This is that red thing that was stuck out. And you can see that all those blue sections and the shaded bits, this is Ukraine cutting off all sorts of Russian troops that were trying to push forward. And now all of a sudden, they have no way out. They're being encircled. So this is kind of a big, you could tell that this was a possibility that Ukraine might have been drawing them into this area in order to cut them off. But with the drone superiority on the battlefield, they're actually capable of doing that now. And that's what they're doing. If you can scroll down just a little bit, you can see the bottom half of that, where it's both directions. And on this Russian map, it appears that the Russians have actually been cut off. So what the truth is, I mean, it's a little bit foggy. And even on this Russian map, you can see how complicated the front line actually is, where like different colors and different shadings to show that all sorts of different statuses of what different land is. But if it's not the solid color, it's pretty much a gray zone. But yeah, you can see that the Russians are thinking that they've been cut off, at least this Russian military analyst. And what they say is actually controlled by the Kremlin. It's interesting that they put that out.
Is this a different map?
This is the one that we just looked at.
Yeah. Okay.
There was an email with a link to caspianpolicy.org that I thought was interesting.
And that's all the oil refineries, that infrastructure.
Unless you want to just skip that, because we spent a lot of time banging on
I've got it up now.
Because the video from that refinery all the way in the east. So this map will be interesting to show you. So all the way on the right-hand side of the map, there are a couple of things. That isn't the one I sent you a Twitter link for with a video, but There's one that's near there. It's a new facility that they spent between 10 and 15 billion dollars making. It was a joint Chinese-Russian project, but that's how far away it is. All those two that are basically just north of Japan, Kamchatka area near Manchuria, long way from Ukraine. So we're trying to figure out what actually happened with this one. But this hasn't even opened yet. They were doing a test, and you can see it's not doing well. So whether this was sabotage, it might have been a Russian partisan group. Maybe Ukraine snuck some drones in there. I don't know. Maybe it was Ukrainian special forces, because we were talking about language, that most Ukrainians speak fluent Russian. And so inserting Ukrainian special forces behind Russian lines and into main Russia is actually a thing. So this just broke today. Literally it broke, but the news broke. And we have no idea how this happened. Is this just bad Russian manufacturing? Was this Ukrainian action? Was this Russian partisan action? We don't know yet, but just as an example, that's $12 billion literally going up in smoke right there. I thought that was interesting. And on that other map, but yeah, just that map from the website that I sent, all of those little refinery things, you can click on them to see how many times Ukraine has hit them, because every single hit doesn't necessarily destroy the refinery. In very rare cases it does. If the fire is bad enough, the fire will destroy it, not the hit. But Ukraine tends to go after the sensitive things. Like if you get a small explosion in this part of the refinery has to shut down. That like 99% of the refinery is fine, but this is the thing that you need to hit to take the whole thing down. Kind of like the Death Star, you know. But yeah, you like that, just throwing in that Star Wars reference for everybody. But there's just been repeated hits. So Ukraine will hit it, they'll destroy or damage the sensitive part of the refinery. Russia will spend time, money, and energy fixing it, getting it back online. And then after they're done spending all the money and all the time and all the labor and getting the components and putting it back together, Ukraine will hit it again. So on that map, you'll see some of these refineries have been hit 10 times. The red ones tend to be hit the most, if I remember correctly. The dark red ones, maybe not. But some of them have multiple hits. And I found that interesting.
11 times.
Like the Volgograd refinery, this used to be Stalingrad for people that know their World War II history. Attack in February 24, there was a fire. Attack May 24, there was another fire. An attack January 25, there was a fire. An attack February 25, there was a fire. August 25, there was a fire. They're probably due to hit that one again. So the campaign against Russian oil is devastating. Ukraine, Russia, that joint thing that went up in flames today with China, this is one of their ways they're trying to get around it, is to build new facilities either in Russia, very, very, very far away from Ukrainian drones, or Kazakhstan recently decided they were going to start refining Russian oil and sending 70% of the refined product back to Russia. They used to have a conduit through Iran where Russia would send their crude oil to Iran. Iran would refine it and then sell it to China, pretending it was Iranian oil. So they've been trying to get around this, but Ukraine's just keeps hitting them and hitting them and hitting them. There was a different graph, I think that might have been on the same website a little bit further down, that shows all the fuel sales restrictions. You don't need to show it, but it's basically Russia-wide. There's some places Crimea is completely out of oil, out of fuel. You can't get fuel in Crimea at some point. And if you don't have fuel, you can't run your generators, you can't power your radars, you can't charge up the batteries on your drones to fly them, you can't put fuel in a bigger drones to fly them. You can't run your trucks, you can't run your cars, you can't run your tanks or anything like that. Your mobile anti-aircraft defenses can't move. And if you can't move your mobile air defense, then it's now a sitting target, a stationary target, and Ukraine can go after it. So there's all of you can't fly your jets. There's all of these things that if you don't have fuel, you just can't do a dozen things. And that's what Ukraine's been going after hard. And then, like I said, it's starting to show payoffs on the battlefield. What else did I send you today?
There's this image. Well, I've got another one here with like about
satellite imagery.
Yes.
That shows the front line from space.
Yes, I got that.
Do that one, because I keep mentioning that the front line is not necessarily a line. It's a very fuzzy region where it's very dangerous, because people sometimes think about war because they've seen movies. If you're not a veteran, you haven't seen how complicated it can be. Excuse me. I mean, you see movies and like, well, let's go up to the front, and if you're behind the front, it's safe. That's not the case. If you get anywhere within 50 miles of the front, on either side, it's dangerous. Currently on the Russian side, it's far more dangerous, but it's you can see the devastation from space. I found that a little bit interesting, because it's basically been in the same place for 4 years at this point. More than that, because that eastern Ukraine part has been a war zone since 2014. You can also see where back in 2022, you can see that lake bottom center. Russia blew that dam. You can see that lake's not there anymore. Can people see that? That's a dam on the Dnieper River. It was a hydroelectric power. That's just not there anymore. You can see that thing on the eastern part. That's near where on the eastern part, that's the those cities that I was talking about. But this extends all the way south towards the Dnieper River, and just the effects that war can have. This one kind of astonished me, but it makes sense seeing what I've seen. I've just never looked at it from this perspective before. So people that in the U.S. in 2024, there was a lot of Trump supporters that said that we want another civil war. We got to take back our country. It's very violent military kind of things. These are people that don't know what war means. And I know I've said this on your channel before. If somebody that knows what war actually means will not be advocating for war. We'll do it if we have to. I'm not going to just sit down and give up, but this is the kind of devastation from space that war means. Enough of that.
Yeah.
Sobering.
So what else do we have here?
So what Russia is doing right now is a little bit disturbing. With, like I said, they're nationalizing their things. They're confiscating bank assets. There was a run on Russian banks. People were getting all their cash out before it got confiscated. It's mass conscription is about to hit. Russia started closing their borders probably 6 weeks ago to prevent what we saw in the last time they tried to mobilize, where 1 million Russians left. They're trying to prevent that, and it's getting kind of ugly. I don't know how to say it, but Russia is doubling down, and if they want to make it even worse, they have that option.
It seems like we're entering a new phase of
Yes.
this war. Maybe
Well, it's
one of the
because
final
Ukraine started
phases.
winning. And so
Mhm.
Russia has to, because it doesn't just stop when one side starts winning, usually, unless they have a giant advantage. And as much as I'm appreciative and happy about Ukraine's successes, it wasn't it wasn't a dominating, we're going to win this quick kind of an advantage. And so Russia has time to respond and in their own way try to innovate out of this situation they find themselves in. But like I said, Ukraine's been taking out their air defenses. The communication, one of the things I didn't send you, and I apologize for this, is Ukraine convinced either the United States government or directly to Elon Musk himself to cut off Starlink access to the Russian military, which caused a whole bunch of communication problems and targeting information problems because Russia was relying on Elon Musk's Starlink to conduct their war. And so what Ukraine was asking for was Starlink only works inside of Ukraine for Ukrainians, and Russia can still have their Starlink inside of Russia, but we want you to stop helping Russia destroy and kill Ukrainians was their request. So Russia decided they would attempt to launch their own constellation of communications. Tiny, the Starlink is small, relatively inexpensive satellites, but they put up thousands of them, so that there's this constant coverage, and each one's small, but it's constant, and there's a whole bunch of them. And the idea is that you're never going to have a blind spot in your communication satellites. Russia decided they were going to launch their own constellation, and Ukraine had thought that Russia wouldn't be able to launch their first until 2027 at the soonest. But Russia launched their first dozen of them, I believe, in June. It might have been July. So Ukraine decided this is one of their new tactics, was instead of trying to shoot down the arrows, they're going after the Archer. And in this case, what that means is going after the rocket factory. So there's only one place in Russia that builds these Soyuz space rockets, the Soyuz 2. And Ukraine hit it with two Flamingo cruise missiles. Each one of those missiles has 2,500 pounds of high explosive, is giant amount of more than a ton of high explosive, and just completely knocked that factory silly. And a couple of days later, what they did is they went after the launch facility. We've had satellite confirmation of the destruction of the factory, but I haven't seen any satellite imagery on what the attack on the launch facility was. The launch facility was north of Moscow. People don't necessarily think north for space launch, but it gets you into the type of polar orbit because they want coverage over Ukraine, and they want something that will go over the north and south poles as opposed to, over the equator. So you get these polar orbits, and that's what that northern site was going after. And so, Ukraine started going after Russia's space launch ability. They've hit Kinzhal ballistic missile factories, rocket fuel propulsion. Part of their going after Russian fuel is people don't realize that a lot of the times rocket fuel, certainly solid rocket fuel, is built from oil. You have to, of course, refine it, and then there's chemical processes, and there's dozens of steps down the line. It's highly refined, highly processed, highly changed, but it started out as crude oil. And Ukraine's been going after that a lot. Russia continues to go after Ukraine civilian centers. It's not just civilian centers. They don't just hit apartment buildings. They do go after. They tried to go after one of Ukraine's. I don't know do you guys have Lowe's and Home Depot? What kind of hardware stores do you guys have in Canada?
Home Depot. We have Lowe's. We have
so there's a
Canadian
version of
stuff
that
too
in Ukraine that will sell things like generators and hammers and all that kind of stuff. Russia hit one of those, but they continue to go after Ukrainian power generation. They're trying to set up another very cold winter for Ukrainian civilians. This has been an annual thing for Russia. The Ukrainian resiliency has been getting better, but it's still kind of a problem. They're going to have another cold winter. And with the lack of Patriot interceptors, they've been having a hard time shooting them down. Now, Germany agreed to send several hundred of the Patriot interceptors that Germany has to Ukraine. And then, of course, there's the idea that Ukraine can either build their own interceptor or build Patriots inside Ukraine, but that's a longer-term solution. The first Ukrainian interceptor might or might not fly by the end of 2026. We'll see how that goes. But Russia still continues hitting Ukraine, and even if Ukraine's shooting down 90 to 95% of the drones and the cruise missiles, that still means that some are getting through. And if Russia is shooting 200 or 300 at you, that means that 30 or 40 of those is actually hitting. Even if you get 90%, that means you're still getting several dozen that are hitting something. Whether it's accurate and they're hitting the target they're aimed at, whether they're hitting an apartment building that is horrible and a war crime, but isn't a power plant or a military site. Those are questions, but yeah, the campaign against Ukraine, Russia's air campaign against Ukraine continues. And it can be horrific at times.
So Trump has come out and has said at times that Ukraine would be, I think he said they were going to get a license to produce Patriots, and then turned around and said they might not because they were concerned about giving the technology to any other countries. And do you know where all of that stands?
We'll see how that goes, because it's not like Ukraine didn't have Patriots in country already. But yes, it is an extra step to actually produce it, because you can have the technology, but it would take you time, effort, and money and all sorts of stuff to try and back engineer. But the other thing, though, is even if we gave them license to build Patriot missiles inside of Ukraine, that is something, because you would have to break ground on the factory. And that is something that you wouldn't see the first Patriot interceptor out of that 18 months if you're lucky. 12 months if you really crash course it and spend a whole bunch of money to shorten the construction time. A whole bunch of extra money, far and above what it would have cost at a normal pace of construction, like wartime emergency construction. So yeah, even if we gave them the license to build it, you wouldn't see the first Ukrainian built Patriot for 18 months. So it would have been a great step. Hopefully it'll still happen, but that's not a short-term solution.
Do we have any idea how long this is going to continue?
The war?
Yeah.
It depends on what the West allows Russia to get away with. And with all of these incursions that Russia's been going into NATO with, the explosive combat drones at German airports should have been a step too far. We'll see how that goes. That's why I was wondering about the CIA's, the director of the CIA visiting Moscow. The things that have been happening in Poland, Romania, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Finland, Sweden, the United Kingdom. All of those Russian incursions into all those nations have been serious and lethal in some cases. It depends on how NATO reacts. Germany continues to grow its support for Ukraine. So how long this will last will depend on how much support Ukraine can get. I will go back to say that even without support, even if Russia managed to somehow take all of Ukraine's land, the war still wouldn't be over. Ukraine would still be fighting back. Because they did that before. They were under Russian oppression between 1922 and 1991, and they didn't give up. So how many decades was that? And we're in the same situation now, that even if Russia decides that they can actually take land, which they can't, that was one of the maps that, though I said it was the wrong map, but it was an example of a different part of the front line. The Pokros direction, which was such a big deal about a year, 18 months ago, they still haven't pushed very far away from that. And there was 24 Russian attacks, and they all got hammered by Ukrainian defenses, and hundreds of Russian soldiers died just in that small 30 by 20 mile map. And that was just one day of the war. I don't think Russia's capable of winning. We just got to support them. And I really wish we had an American president that was willing to push back on Russia. I don't think Biden pushed back hard enough. I think he was scared of Russia's nuclear threats. And Trump likes Putin. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. It's going to be a while. I think anybody that's saying that this is going to end anytime soon is kidding themselves. I don't think they're looking at the reality. As much as I love the Ukrainians and I'm proud of their success the last 6 months or so, I think we're in for more.
But it looks like the tide has turned, and
it does look like Russia's on the back foot. Yes. And Ukraine is intelligently hitting back, where Russia makes a thing about hitting Ukrainian apartment buildings. Ukraine is hitting the Russian rocket factories and the Russian oil refineries and the Russian space launch facilities. And yeah, air defenses, all those things are just getting hammered.
Surprises a lot of people because this thing was supposed to be over real quick.
3 days. That was the idea.
Yeah. Wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to talk about more other things. It's already, but
yeah. Well, I do want to talk about this.
Yeah, you're gonna have to scroll up. Speaking of renaming things, this is Mar-a-Lago in Florida. For those that are not aware of what this looks like from above, and you can see that someone renamed it Kremlin headquarters. So, if you want, this is how to fight back, because I'm sure this got on under a lot of people's skin. But if you want to fight back, this is one of the things that, if he thinks renaming things is that big of a deal, okay, let's play that game. Let's start renaming things. So,
but it's probably true. It's probably true.
I mean, I could care less sometimes what a lake is called or anything like that, but it's evidently a big deal to him. So yeah, let's start renaming things.
And we should probably just touch on this too. You did send me these images.
Which ones did I send you?
Well, I'll show you. Right there.
So these, I've got the flag behind me, but that's not the only Ukrainian flag that I have. These are two different units that sent me and signed it, some unit flags. And I have those hanging out in front of my house to celebrate their Independence Day. I tried not to show the construction because I'm repairing storm damage. And so I cropped all that out of the window, but out of the picture. But yeah.
Well, definitely wanted to show that. Were there other images in there too, I think, that you sent that are important?
Probably. I mean, I sent you, there's that thing that, God, it's the Abraham Lincoln, the aircraft carrier, just today departed the Iranian combat space. And it's heading, I believe, Thailand for its first port call since December 2025. That will be the first opportunity for the sailors to actually leave the ship. And I might go ahead. It's like a picture of where are the carriers. I might have sent you a link.
I've got it.
And it's to a TWZ article, I believe I sent, because you can click on the picture and it'll expand.
Right there.
So this is what is off of this. No, this is live. This is what is currently off of Iran. The George Bush, the older Bush, and the George Washington that just arrived out of Japan. Note that the George Washington operating off of Iran means that the United States does not have an aircraft carrier to counter China right now. China and North Korea usually rate at least one aircraft carrier, and there is not an American aircraft carrier countering North Korea or China currently, because Trump decided to start a war with Iran that nobody else thought was a good idea. And it's eating up America's ability to counter other threats. If you back all the way out on this picture, I don't know if you can. Well, go to the right. Show mainland United States.
If I can.
Over to the left, maybe.
I can't get it to move. Am I missing the toggle or?
Oh, go down on the article. I see what you're doing. Go down on the article.
Mm-hmm.
That's the picture.
Oh,
click
okay.
on that. So if you go onto the click onto the United States, I don't know if you can zoom in on that or not, but you can see that we have two carriers operating off of Iran. That's what we just showed. There should be another green carrier around somewhere. Oh, there's the three that we have, are all off of Iran. There are two blue ones off the United States, if I'm remembering the colors right, that they are finished with their most recent maintenance, and they are currently in a training status that are spinning up for the ability to do combat. They could probably do it right now. Then you have two that just returned to port. One of those was the Ford, which was also out for like 9 months and has a lot of things broken, and it really needs to go back to port to get those things fixed. Things that were, when they built the ship, they were meant to last 6 to 7 months. And once you start operating the ship for 9 months, that's well past what they were designed to do. And each one of these ships has 5,000 sailors on board. And that's a lot of people to put on a ship. And we're talking basic things like air conditioning and toilets and showers and food production and just all of these basic things that you need to operate the ship, because to operate the ship, you need sailors that are capable of doing that. And that means they need to be fed. They need to be able to wash themselves. They need to be able to get some sleep. And so all of those things are vital to an aircraft carrier operating properly. Once you start having it at sea too long, those things start to break. And that's what the deal was with the Lincoln. And things were just starting to break. In the Lincoln's case, it was complicated because one of the things the United States is really good at is resupplying our own troops. But one of the things that Hegseth was covering up was the extent of the damage that Iran was able to inflict on local American military bases. And one of those in Bahrain was the primary resupply source for American naval ships in the region. It was the naval headquarters and a supply hub. And a lot of the people that worked there were, they had to pay with out of pocket to get out of there. Some of the warehouses were hit. And then somebody decided that instead of defending it harder, we just weren't going to use it. We were just going to operate longer supply lines, which means that it would be harder to supply your troops. That instead of just flying a helicopter from Bahrain to your ship, now you have to have a ship go 4,000 miles, sail 4,000 miles back to port, load up, sail 4,000 miles back. And it's harder to do. And that will affect the things that don't last very long. So fresh food. And then if you have these longer supply lines that you're harder to get things, you're going to have to prioritize things. So maybe you don't bring as many new clothes or soap, things that, sailors might be able to do without for a little bit, but you just can't get them there. And then of course it was extended for months and months and months. And when I say this is the dumbest war ever, these are the kinds of things that I'm looking at, that I'm thinking this is the dumbest war ever. But back to that map, we have 11 carriers We can have 3 operating, 2 are finished with maintenance and getting ready to go out. So now you've got 5. You have 2 that just returned to port. Now you're up to 7. Those will enter maintenance. That will take between 6 to 12 months. And since they were out and there was a lot of things that were designed to last 6 months, but now they're broken, at 6 months, you could have repaired it. But now at 9 months, they're broke and you might have to replace it, or the repair has to be far more extensive. You didn't order those parts because the scheduled maintenance is planned years ahead of time. And now you have to order the parts, and that will delay the maintenance repairs. You can see all these downriver effects whenever you extend the deployment of the ship. And in addition to that, these are nuclear powered ships. They're designed to last 50 years, but the nuclear fuel only lasts 25 years because of the way, half-lives and stuff like that. So every 25 years into the life of the ship, we have something called the RCOH, Repair and Complex Overhaul, where it's designed to refuel the ship, and the nuclear reactors are deep into the ship, underneath the waterline and underneath of armor to protect them as designed. That means that you have to cut deep, deep, deep into the ship to pull out the spent fuel and put in new fuel. So as long as you're doing that, you do things like, this plumbing is 25 years old. We're going to rip out all of the plumbing in the ship and replace it. The electrical stuff was designed, a long time ago, and it doesn't quite suit our needs. We're going to pull out thousands of miles of wiring from this ship and replace it with newer gear. That's the kind of stuff that happens in the RCOH part. It'll take 3 or 4 years to get through that. And that's designed into our maintenance schedule. When I talk about it's 6 months and there's a certain amount of design. So there's currently 1 ship that's finishing that. I forgot which one. And there's another one that's waiting to go into that. So that's 2 more. Now you're up to 9. You have the Nimitz, which is now 51 years old. And by the time it retires, it'll be 52 years old. That's not really a ship anymore, but they're keeping it on the books. So now you're up to 10. And the 11th is actually the JFK that hasn't finished building yet. It is on builder's trials. So technically you could probably send it into combat, but it's really not ready yet. So you can see that for 11 carriers, when you talk about how a fleet actually works, and then you add stress to it by having a war that takes a whole bunch of assets, because I've said before, Iran might look small on the map, but it is not. It's 90 million people. Some of them are very smart and some highly trained engineers. Iran is not a pushover state. And it takes a lot of military power to overcome them. So stupid. And it's eating up the fleet. This kind of thing, these kinds of delays, and then the downriver effect on maintenance will be affecting America's aircraft carrier fleet. We'll probably still be feeling the effects 5 years from now, and that's as if it stops now.
And you have the president ordering the retrofit of launch systems for aircraft carriers.
That's
really
so dumb. I don't think that's going to happen. Because it's just so dumb that a lot of people, even the sycophants around Trump, will be able to see, because so he wants there's a ship under construction. I don't know where it is, but maybe it's 50% done, just to pull out a number, but it's not a ship yet. But they're a long ways into building the ship. A significant amount of work has been done. And when I say that it might be somewhere near 50% constructed, that means they also already ordered, and in some cases already built, parts of the ship that haven't been assembled yet, right? They're just waiting in the line to be part of the construction project. The design on this is already done. They've already in place some of the power. So the electromagnetic the EMAL system, the arrestor gear, and the catapults are electric on the Ford class ships. And on the older Nimitz class ships, like the Lincoln that just left the Iran combat space, they're steam, which the nuclear power plant is fundamentally a steam power plant. The nuclear fuel heats up water to create steam, and that's how the ship gets its power. And so they had to trunk the steam catapults into that power system, which requires piping and things that cut into the ship because you have to somehow connect it to the power plant. So the wires and the power cables that would go to the electronic system take up much less space and are in some ways a much simpler system that the ship was built and designed around. The two that are nearing completion and the Enterprise and the Doris Miller are under construction currently. So we've got 4 ships that are already designed and well underway to being completed for the electronic system. The idea that you're going to be able to change this design and put in a steam powered system, because it's not just the catapults, it's also the arrestor gear, that's not going to work. You're going to need a new design, or you're going to need to start building the Nimitz class design. We haven't built one of these steam catapults for more than 20 years. That's the last time that a Nimitz ship was built, a long time ago. So the idea that we're just going to be able to restart it's just stupid.
How did Trump get this in his head? Because I remember him talking about it in some speeches even during the election.
And I talked about downriver effects. One of the worst Secretary of Defenses we had in history was Donald Rumsfeld. He was 2001 to 2006. So when I talk about downstream effects, we're still dealing with his silliness today. One of the things that he did is we're looking at the Nimitz class carriers, that we're ending construction on Nimitz class carriers as he was Secretary of Defense. And so, okay, what comes next? The Nimitz is a great ship. They gave great service life. They're going to still be sailing for decades to come, but what comes next? And so they decided, well, okay, can we do better than steam? And it's true, you can do better than steam with electronics. You can launch, you can put a certain power setting for a drone and a different power setting. It's very scalable on how much power you launch an aircraft with. It's easier on the aircraft, it's easier on the crew, and just has the potential to be a superior product. But anytime that you're trying to develop something new, that you're trying to do something you've never done before, and something that has to be as complex and as durable as a combat system aboard an aircraft carrier, that's some pretty complex engineering problems that you have to solve. And so Donald Rumsfeld, had his idea of transformation, that that was his buzzword, that he was going to transform the U.S. military. And this is one of the things he was trying to do, is the electronic systems on the Ford class carriers. We basically solved probably 99% of the engineering problems probably 5 years ago. And now we're getting a good understanding on how to build them competently, as opposed to, doing there's the basic engineering to get it to work. And then there's the next step. You have to figure out how to build it on more than just, a reliable test system, So we got there about 5 years ago, but what he saw in his first term was that it was a serious struggle, because in 2017 to 2021, we were still dealing with some serious engineering problems on the electronics, but they've been solved for the most part. No system's ever perfect, and if you talk to steam catapults, those go down too. So, and the pipe can be burst. It's just all sorts of things can go wrong with any system. So yeah, I think maybe it's part of his dementia thing, because he also wanted the Ford class. People that aren't naval nerds might not be aware that on the Ford class, they have an island structure. That's the stuff that's the thing that sticks up above the flight deck, has like the radars on top and the masts and stuff. That's the superstructure. And you might call it the bridge. it's further back on the Ford than it is on the Nimitz, and the Nimitz is further back than it was on our World War II aircraft carriers, the Essex class, the big aircraft carriers we had back then. So it keeps moving back, but there's a real military reason for that. Is if you move it back, you can use the deck space more efficiently. And he decided that he wanted them to have a bigger bridge, more forward in the ship, like the World War II ships. And so that's another change that he wanted. It's just mind-numbingly stupid. I don't know if this is a symptom of dementia, that he is going back to an idea that he had in the 1980s. That's because we still had Essex class World War II ships in the 1980s. I believe the Lexington was still operating as a training aircraft carrier. And he thought that was how they should look. And now he's looking at them and he's all about branding and style, and he doesn't understand that there's actual reason why we changed it. So there's all these things that he's trying to do. And the Navy today started putting out some pretty hard defenses because there was a test that the Nimitz class has 4 elevators that lift jets from the hangar deck up to the flight deck. They have 4 of them. The Nimitz only the Ford class. The Nimitz has 4. The Ford class only has 3. But for all of that, the Ford class can launch. Their launch rate is something like 130% of what the Nimitz class is. Some of that also has to do with you can't cycle the steam catapults as fast. Because once you shoot the steam catapult, you have to retract it. You have to wait for the steam to build back up. There's a certain amount of lag just in the fact that you're using steam. And that has a ceiling on how fast you can launch aircraft. The electric system doesn't have that ceiling. You can launch as fast as you want. The limiting factor now is how fast can you move jets around the flight deck. You launch the jet, how fast can you move the next jet onto the catapult? There's things he doesn't understand, but the Navy started pushing back hard today, that saying, yes, the system is actually a better system. So,
and Hegseth seems to keep butting heads with people, including the Stars
top
and Stripes,
generals.
actually. Yeah.
It's not Stars and Stripes. He took away their editorial freedom because they had been promised, and they had been for decades. And this goes back to the presumption of trust, that if the Stars and Stripes magazine used to be a newspaper, now it's just a website, used to be one of those things that, yes, it was kind of sort of affiliated with the U.S. military, but if Stars and Stripes put it out, kind of like Radio Free Europe is a similar thing, if they put it out, it was probably trustworthy. It might have been spun a little bit, but they were going to be publishing accurate facts. They might have left some facts out because it's still military, but it was still considered a relatively trustworthy source. But now I talked about United States losing the presumption of trust. Why on earth would I read Stars and Stripes right now? I can just listen to a Department of Defense, media talking points, and it would be the same thing. So if you take away their editorial independence, why do you have Stars and Stripes? Because you have your public affairs military people that would be saying the same thing. So that makes no sense. Hegseth has recently fired a lot of generals, including a lot of big army generals in Europe that had very important commands. Evidently, he is butting heads with the civilian secretary of the army, who is Trump's own choice. And that guy might retire before the end of the year just because he's just so sick of it. Maybe he'll become one of those Trump opposition, conservatives opposed to Trump kind of people. So yeah, it's a big old mess. And the expenditure of weapon systems, like we talk about how many Patriots and cruise missiles we shot off in the Iran war. I talked about the maintenance damage it's doing to the ships. We haven't talked about the personnel, because if you're on a ship like that, why on earth would you re-enlist? So now we're talking about retention, and you've got these people that are trained. A sailor aboard an aircraft carrier probably took $1 million to train, and probably a full year. And to replace that person, you got to spend another $1 million and another year just training them before they can get to the ship. And even then, they're just fresh out of training. You have no experience there. They're still wet behind the ears, right? They have no idea what they're doing. They just have their training. They have no practical experience. So you're losing all of the experienced people, and it's becoming a real problem. Yeah. And it's going to have follow-on effects that are going to last years.
Well, there's one thing I do want to mention at the very end, but I'll just ask you, is there anything else you wanted to add tonight or think that we might be missing?
We should all miss Dolly Parton.
That's what I wanted to talk about.
She was a strong supporter of Ukraine.
Mhm.
And not only that, she was, by all accounts, a kind and generous person who was always supportive of the downtrodden, the people that were oppressed. Her career spanned decades. She was 80 years old. She turned 80 years old just recently, if I remember correctly. And she was a supporter of civil rights. She was a supporter of other oppressed people. 9 to 5 was a feminist icon movie showing the status in, kind of, it was a movie, it was a comedy. And so for what it's worth, but it had a little bit of a window on what women have to put up with in the workplace, at least back in the 1970s. And yeah, she was an icon. She had an amazing voice. I don't think among musicians, she has the credit that I think she deserves, but a lot of people think of her as a pop or a country singer, but she had her vocal abilities were astonishing. And even if you listen to a pop song from a movie soundtrack like 9 to 5, you're going to hear you're going to turn your head like, is that what I just heard? Holy cow. Is that just actually come out of her mouth? It's just astonishing ability that she had. And like I said, she was a vocal supporter of Ukraine, and I think we should all miss her.
I want us to send our love and hope to our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. Yeah. So why don't we just dedicate this entire show to them and pray for peace around this crazy old world. Good sounding guitar, and we're playing it for a good reason. I will always love you.
Yeah, it's back. So yeah, my favorites are Jolene, if people know that, and 9 to 5. But man, she has so many songs. I'm sure there's other favorites that people would be able to bring up that I'm like, ooh, I should listen to that. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Mourn Dolly Parton, listen to some of her music. Yeah, good times.
And we'll have more to say about that tomorrow night. And Mike, thank you so much for putting up with my rant, especially at the beginning. But us Canuckistanians, we still love America.
Well,
regardless of all the silliness that's going on. We just have to get back to a better place. Yeah. And and around here, we always make sure that we use our superpowers for good, never for evil, because we're all maverick men and women, and you're certainly one of us. So thank you, sir, for joining us here tonight. And
well, hopefully I gave somebody something to think about.
Yeah. And we'll be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
Maverick man, does the work of a real man, holds the line in any fight, fixes the wrongs and makes them right. Look out! Here comes a maverick man. Is he tough? like a flash of pure light. He arrives just in time. Maverick man, he's a true gentleman. Praise and glory he ignores. Doing good is his reward. To him life's a noble call up. Wherever there's a foul up, you'll find the Maverick man. Hey there, that's a real Maverick
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.